If you are trying to solve a problem for your product, ask these 3 questions to define who should you talk to. In this video, I will disclose the mythical process of figuring out how to find users to talk to. While each user research project is a unique problem statement, it also requires a uniquely curated approach to find users. Broadly speaking, this is the method I use as a UX researcher at Microsoft to find users to talk for my user research project. Alright, 3 questions you must ask. 1. What kind of people should I talk to? Second, is this the right group or sample of people to talk to? And third, how do I get to these people? Let's see here. A good screening process is one which has these 3 things. Questions that filter out people that are contextually relevant for your project. Meaning, if you're trying to learn about why do people leave your shopping app, you'd want to speak with people that A, have recently left your shopping app, and B, people that have left your shopping app a while ago and are active users on your Competes app. So group A will tell you all the reasons, triggers, and value gaps on your platform that push them to try out other apps. Group B will tell you what your service or product has been missing for some time now and what does the Compete do better. And that's why they've been pulled to your Competes platform. So you could infer by now that contextual relevance is defined by the objectives of your study. Make sure you have a clear and distinct research objectives. Ensure that they are not more than 4 per study. So 4 distinct research objective statements every study. Alright. The next piece is to take care of creating an unbiased sample. This means that you want to make sure you don't speak with all the users that give you only one kind of information, or that all users come from only one kind of context. For example, if you are trying to test a communication app with Gen Zs or people in their 20s, you wouldn't understand the challenges of a 50 or a 60-year-old user. Typically, those folks have lower tech fluency or visual impairments. So randomly selecting people to participate in a study creates a lot of bias just inside the sample itself. So this bias does not come in from how the interview was taken or how the questions were articulated. This bias comes in just by the kind of people that you have spoken with. The last piece is to think about how do we ensure that we don't go too far ahead and plan to speak with a unicorn-like user. A unicorn user is somebody that is extremely difficult or expensive to find. So think about ways to ensure that the recruitment for these users is also feasible. Now that you know the 3 main ingredients of creating a good screening process for your user research study, let's jump into the details of how to make the process relevant, unbiased, and feasible. Alright, converting research questions, objectives, or goals into screening criteria. This is pretty straightforward. You want to know why people use or leave your music app? Speak to people that use or have left your music app. Filtering participants based on usage behavior. Here, try to do some bit of cohort analysis. Some examples of what a cohort is basically customers who sign up for a membership program after New Year's at a gym, right? Or customers that frequently come to the gym, customers that have come to the gym only when they are reminded of, etc. So now each of these category represents a customer cohort. So when trying to filter participants based on their usage or behavior, doing some bit of cohort analysis really helps. Some other examples of cohorts would be users who have signed up for a product via organic search, customers who subscribed for a newly launched paid feature after the first email, and on. So this is the part where you must get super intentional about what types of users do you want to speak with and why. So what information will these cohorts help you with, and what decisions will you be able to make after talking to these cohorts? Have that clear. Document these pieces down. So what does the cohort look like? Why do you want to speak with them? What kind of information you're hoping that particular set of customers or users will bring you, right? So having clarity about flexible and non-flexible criteria. So now these 2 points that we talked about earlier are already complicated. It's extremely easy to slip into the search for like the unicorn user, or search for the most expensive people to find, right? So know that you may have to compromise on 80% of your criteria. May being the keyword, we don't know that yet. So that means that you shouldn't discount the process of creating the most optimum screener that you can. Keep some of the criteria flexible. Test a few times if you are able to find users that meet criteria A, B, and C, but not F, G, and K. Document what are the negotiable and non-negotiable criteria. In the next round of research, strategize or prep a little bit more to get users from the negotiable criteria, right? Another point is presuming demographic criteria. For example, hikers must only be younger than 50, right? A quick tip is to make sure that you don't assume that only a certain type of demographics fits into a certain behavior or usage pattern. It's not necessary that a person from a tier 2 city would not behave in the same way as a city dweller does, or vice versa. People are not statistical averages, but there is a lot of value in understanding the quote-unquote one-of-a-kind user, right? So don't make assumptions about what would a cred user look like. Accurately represent the customer composition that you're targeting. Every business has a target audience. Within that group, there could be multiple subcategories of customers. For example, Uber targets people that commute to office on a daily basis, families that go for an outing, or women that need to book a cab late in the night, right? But they prefer to use Uber instead of a regular cab because of its safety features. So your research study must be a mix of these three customers if you're Uber, and preferably in the same ratio as the current usage or potential usage, right? So another point to look after is mixed demographics. So age, location, gender, ethnicity, income group, etc. Make sure that you don't restrict yourself to one time zone only, unless and until your product, app, or concept only works in that time zone, or age group, or income group. So just make sure that that sort of an oversight is not done in the sampling. One thing you want to avoid is convenience sampling. I've noticed that stakeholders are often in a rush to conduct a user research study. There's a lot of pressures that they are working under, so they would quickly just rely on users in their connections to get feedback, and in these cases you run extremely high risks of creating a poorly informed research outcome. So this does more harm than good, so it's always better to spend a little more time in creating a recruitment strategy, figuring out how to reach out to the best kind of people for your research study. Another thing we want to avoid is availability bias. For example, people that are available, I'll just speak to them. I'll speak to my coworkers. I'll speak to professional testers that test only to make like a side income, or I will speak with people in the UX industry because they are the most accessible to me. So for ease of recruitment, people try to reach out to the first available person for their research study. These are usually people that are most interested to talk about the topic at hand. They're super articulated people. But in these scenarios, you also run a really high risk of taking decisions that are created only for your group, or just your kinds of users. So we want to ensure that we avoid doing something like this. So the gold standard to an unbiased sampling is to create a participant group that is representative of the target group for your product or feature. So when talking about feasible recruitment, there are a couple of methods that you can use to find people that you want to talk to. In this video, let's talk about 5 most commonly used recruiting methods, and we will try to rate all of them on certain parameters like reach, how many number of people does this recruiting method help us get in touch with, how expensive is it, how much effort does it take to engage in this recruiting method, how much time, and how biased is this recruiting method. If we talk about professional recruitment, these are companies or services that you reach out to, and for an exchange for some amount, depending on your ask, they will help you get in touch with the right kind of people, and typically in moderate amounts of time. So in my experience, if I were doing a study in India with a professional recruitment agency, in the span of a week or two, I'd be able to reach out to 60 people that seem to fit into my criteria. I could get on a quick 5-minute call with them to make sure that they are the right fit, and then out of those 60, I can schedule an interview with 30 of them. So 15 days, 30 participants. That's a good to go scenario. So typically professional recruiters have a database of people that participate in such studies, and they can help you schedule a session, because these agencies allow for extremely low biases, and you need to take low efforts. The cost is really high for some startups, or even for large corporations. The cost could be really high depending on their criteria. But this is something to keep in mind for like your flagship research project, right? Then there are recruitment platforms like user testing. Again, the reach for these are extremely wide. They're not as expensive as hiring a recruitment agency that helps you get in touch with people on a one-off basis. A recruitment platform allows you to have a yearly or a 6-month long subscription where you can pay per use basis. Effort is low, time is low, and again, bias risk is also low. So depending on what your requirements are, you can choose which alternative do you want. Internal user panel is also a great method, where typically product makers would start cold emailing some of their customers, some of their highly engaged customers, and request them to be a part of this internal user panel, and they would get to sort of critique, give us feedback about the early builds, and give us feedback about what's working and not working in the product. Typically the reach for this is narrow. If 100 people use your app, about two of them would reach out to you, where they would be interested in volunteering to be a part of your internal user panel. I'm not sure if there are apps or companies where more than 2% of their MAU is a part of their internal user panel. Cost is extremely low. Effort is a medium level of effort, where you would have to try to learn about each individual customer, keep a track of their profile, reach out to them and request them to schedule an hour with you, and that's only if they're interested in talking to you about the topic at hand, so on and so forth. Time is relatively low, but bias risk could be medium to high, as these people are already enrolled onto your product, which means they've already established product market fit. Then there is online forums and social media. So if I have a LinkedIn page, I can reach out to people in my immediate circles and ask them to sort of reshare a recruitment post that I've put up where I'm asking for people that use Microsoft Excel, that have started using Microsoft Excel in the last month, right? So I can do a shout out and I could see how are people responding. Again, this recruiting method runs into the availability bias case. So bias risk is high, moderate amount of time. It takes a lot of effort in making sure that you're constantly following up with people that are reaching out to you with intent of interest. Cost is extremely low. You may have to incentivize some the time that people are willing to spend with you. You may not, depending on your personal agreement with them. And the reach is again narrow, so it's just my connections. Then we have intercept studies. Intercept studies is when, let's say you want to learn about how do people fill up petrol at a petrol pump. So you go to the pump and speak with people that would be interested to speaking with you on the pump, right? So you interject in there every day. You request them to spend some time with you. Again, the reach for this is extremely narrow, extremely dependent on how much time do you have, whether or not people have the time with you. At one point of time, you could only cover like a pump or two. Cost is extremely low. You just need to show up to that place. Effort is extremely high, so it's sort of like a sales. You need to prep a sales pitch, persuade them, look convincing that you're not a stalker or a creep or a random stranger just reaching out for no reason, and it takes a moderate amount of time. Again, bias risk is medium. Here bias risk is medium despite the fact that reach is narrow, only because you're finding people in context, so some bit of credibility for that person is already established, that person uses that service, hence they are contextually relevant for you. So yeah, keeping these things in mind and depending on the constraints of your budget, team size, amount of time, and your appetite for bias risk, you can choose which recruitment method suits best in your use case. While the process seems intimidating at the beginning, keep following it. Invite stakeholders in the decision-making process. It pays off when all stakeholders feel confident about the work stream. Once again, thank you so much for joining me and stay tuned to learn more.